Okay, so we're looking at a question regarding the ansoff matrix and Porter's generic strategy. And as we've discussed, the question that we went through in class, practice question, had a scenario given and then we had to apply the ansoff matrix and Porter's generic strategy to that. What I want to do is flip that round. The knowledge that you're demonstrating is the same, but you will make up your own scenarios and you will be asked to make those scenarios up in relation to two of the four quadrants in the ansoff matrix, and then apply both of those to Porter's generic strategy, and you would do that separately. So let's start off with the intro. First thing you do, refer to the main points of the question, because that shows that you understand what's required. So you'll see highlighted in red you will see discuss strategic use, ansoff matrix, Porter's generic strategy, and UK hospitality market. So those are the things that you need to focus on in your answer. So next thing we do is start to discuss the theory of the ansoff matrix and talk about all four quadrants. Forget about defending your choice at this stage, that's just a typo on my part, but you are explaining what all the four quadrants mean. So, first thing that you need to do is, when you're talking about defining what ansoff's theory is talk about where it sits in the linear planning and the strategy model. So, Emily's question was, do you mention the bits before where it comes in? So yes, you do. You talk briefly about you've conducted your external and your internal analysis, you've produced your summary SWOT, and you've stated the key issues or challenges, and then at this stage that's where the ansoff matrix comes in, because that gives you the opportunity to consider your strategic options. Once you've done that, then you talk about the ansoff matrix itself. Now you need to be able to talk about all four of the quadrants. The question will ask you to talk in detail about two, so you'll have to apply in context two areas of that quadrant, but you need to be able to discuss briefly what the implications are for all four of the quadrants. So it would be helpful if you could draw this diagram. I'm just pointing you now to the 4 slides from the lecture on the ansoff matrix. This gives you a little bit more detail of what each of those quadrants is about and what their uses are, etc., because you'll need all that information when you're doing your discussion within your exam answer. Next, we're looking at theory of Porter's generic strategy. So again, this is from your slide deck. It's looking at cost leadership, differentiation, cost focus, differentiation focus. So cost leadership's a broad focus, cost focus is a narrow one, and then up the left in red there you've got the fact that the broad focus targets the whole market, and by using a cost element you're looking to lower costs to increase profit. So you're not necessarily looking to increase prices to increase your profit. Whereas differentiation, you target the whole market in a broad focus, and there you're not looking at costings or anything, you're looking at offering a superior product to increase your profit. So by offering that superior product you can charge a premium price for it. So just pointing you back towards some of your lecture note slides again. If you look on the right there, we're looking at cost leadership. That's the one circled. Some key points for that. We've got an example of its application, and then we've got some methods for reducing costs as part of a cost leadership strategy. Then moving on to differentiation, same thing. We've got key points for that, and these are important. So you need to be talking about commands a premium price, elasticity. Price elasticity is lower, and you should know what that is. But if you don't, come and ask me. Should result in above average profits, and there are additional barriers to entry. And then this slide, again from the slide deck in the lecture, how we actually achieve that differentiation. And finally, got an example. We did discuss in the lecture that this was maybe a bit of an older example than we'd like, because there are quite a few things that have replaced the Burj in Dubai in terms of being contemporary and differentiation, but it's still a valid example. So once you've decided that bit, then you need to look at your focus. So once you've decided whether it's cost or differentiation that you're going for, you need to decide whether it's a broad or a narrow focus. So broad's the whole market, and narrow is one or more particular segments. And then once you've discussed the Ansoff matrix and you've discussed Porter's generic strategy, you need to apply both of those to a scenario of your choice. Now remember, you will be asked to do a scenario based on two different quadrants of the Ansoff matrix. So the discussions you have around those quadrant areas will be different. It'll be a different scenario for both, and I'll explain why when we get on to this next slide. So just remember, firstly you're talking about the Ansoff matrix, scenario 1, then you apply that to Porter's generic strategy, then you do Ansoff matrix for scenario 2 for the second quadrant, and your reasoning for that strategy in terms of Porter's generic framework. Now remember, you'll have to develop a different scenario for each of the two Ansoff quadrants, because market penetration, if you were to get that one, would be an existing product in an existing market, whereas market development would be a new product in an existing market. Now it might well be that for both your scenarios, the strategy from Porter's generic framework that you choose is the same, but it could also be different as well. Just go through a couple of questions we had in the session. So one question was, is a question likely to ask for two specific ones? Yes, it will. I'll give you the ones. In the exam question, it will say which two of those quadrants you need to discuss. And the other question was, do we still discuss all aspects of Porter's as well, even if they don't apply to our scenario? Well, yes you do, because Porter's framework is relatively small, and I want you to talk about why you've discounted a broad or a narrow focus depending on which way you've gone with your scenario. And another question was, will this question require a summary? Yes it will, but it will be fairly brief. It will be just summarising what you've said. I've talked about this, this and this in relation to ansoff, in relation to porter, etc, etc. So I'll give you an example. What you need to do is justify your application of ansoff, and then for porters, and you've got to use the same scenario for both, for ansoff and porters, for each of the two quadrants. So for example, a greengrocer wants to start selling oranges online as well as in her shop, and this is an example of market development in the ansoff matrix, because it's a new market to her with an existing product. She's already got oranges as a product, but she's never sold them online before, so that's the new market bit. So you would talk around that and why she would use market development. What are the things in there that would need to be considered? So you're applying that decision making process to it. And then, for argument's sake, using Porter's generic strategy, she may decide on differentiation to the whole market by only selling oranges from a specific region in Andalusia in Spain. So she's not doing it on a cost basis. She's not saying these are the cheapest oranges in the world. What she's saying is these are the best oranges in the world because they only come from this particular region in Andalusia. You know, and your strategy will be to highlight the growing conditions, the way that they're transported, all those different sorts of things. That's what would differentiate from competitors, and that's what would enable her to command a premium price. So you do that for if I asked you to do one for market development, and then I might ask you to do one for product development, so you do the same thing, but obviously you'd need to develop a different scenario, because product development is existing market, new product. So you would talk about all the vagaries of product development in the same way, and then you decide which aspects of Porter's generic framework you would use. So remember, you've got to develop case study for more than one scenario to describe the two different quadrants that you will be asked to discuss in your answer.